So, you think you know your Greek myths. How about an army born from the blood of chopped-off genitals? A living nightmare with 50 heads and 100 hands that stopped a rebellion of the gods just by showing up. Or how about the time the top god, Zeus, was turned into a helpless, paralyzed husk when a monster literally ripped out his sinews? These are the filthiest, bloodiest, most insane secrets of Olympus, the kind they'd never dare teach you in school. And today, we're tearing the lid off all of them. Her beauty was weaponized, all right? Buckle up. Today, we're talking about how beauty can be turned into a weapon of mass destruction. And no, I'm not talking about some Instagram model with access to the nuclear codes. This is a story where the gods were the real scumbags, and the victim was twisted into the monster. Of course, I'm talking about Medusa. Forget everything you saw in the cartoons. The whole evil Gorgon with snakes for hair thing. That's just the final chapter of the filthiest story of victim blaming in all of ancient Greek mythology. See, originally, Medusa wasn't just beautiful, she was drop-dead gorgeous. And get this, she was a priestess in the temple of Athena, the goddess of wisdom, which means she was under Athena's protection. In theory, but in practice, Poseidon had his eye on her. You know, the one, the overbearing, bearded dude with the trident, god of the seas. And he didn't bother with wooing her, or flowers, or poetry. He just took what he wanted, by force. And you know where this atrocity went down, right inside Athena's temple. He violated her priestess on the sacred floor, desecrating everything Medusa believed in. Can you imagine how she felt? The pain, the humiliation, the fear, and then who shows up? The lady of the house, the wise Athena. So what does she do? Help her priestess? Punish her uncle Poseidon? Yeah, right? She's furious that her temple has been desecrated. And who does she blame? Medusa. And this is where things get truly twisted. Athena turns her beauty into a curse. Her magnificent hair, the hair everyone admired, begins to writhe and hiss on her head, transforming into a nest of venomous, slimy snakes. Her soft skin erupts in hideous, cold scales, but the worst part, her eyes. Her gaze, now filled with all her pain and despair, becomes a deadly weapon. One look and you're stone. Athena didn't just punish her. She made her ugly, lonely, and a danger to everyone, turning the victim into a monster. But wait, there's more. When the hero Perseus came and lopped her head off from her decapitated body, from the gushing fountain of blood and gore, her children by Poseidon were born. Can you imagine that bloody delivery room? Out came the winged horse Pegasus and the giant Chrysaor. And here's the part they leave out of the history books, where we see the true power of her curse. Her severed head kept on working. It became the ultimate weapon in Perseus's hands. And just so you grasp the scale of this ... he used it to turn the Titan Atlas to stone. A Titan, a goddamn immortal being. This proves that the power Athena gifted her was so monstrous, it even worked on divine creatures. So next time you see a picture of Medusa, think about this. Her tragedy, her pain, her humiliation were all turned into a tool. She was made into a monster, and then her own curse was used as a weapon. So who's the real monster here? The girl who was broken, or the gods who played with her fate for their own ego? Now that's a dark story for you. See you around. The prisoners of the abyss who forged the gods' power. All right, people, ready for a dose of some real dark history? Buckle up. Today, we're talking about how the top dogs on Olympus got their toys. We're used to thinking of Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades as the pinnacle of power, the alpha dogs of the universe. But what if I told you that all their power, all their swagger, wasn't their own doing? That it was forged by 3 miserable prisoners, betrayed twice by their own family, and left to rot in the foulest pit in all creation? Meet the Cyclopes, and forget the cartoons where they're just big and dumb. These were primordial titans, sons of the sky god, Uranus himself. Huge, ugly, overgrown man-children with a single eye planted in the middle of their foreheads. Picture it. A colossal body, as rough as unhewn stone, and in the center of its face, one eye, bloodshot and burning with primal fury. Their strength was so immense that the earth trembled when they walked. And what did their loving daddy Uranus do when he saw his firstborns? He was so disgusted he practically gagged. He found them so repulsive that, without a second thought, he grabbed them and hurled them into Tartarus. Just so you understand, Tartarus isn't just a prison. It's a bottomless, stinking pit at the very ass end of existence. A place of eternal darkness where the only sounds are the grinding of bones and the echo of endless despair. Imagine the smell, a mix of rotting flesh, sulfur, and hopelessness. That's where the Cyclopes spent their youth. All because their dad didn't like the look of them. But wait, it gets better. An eternity later, their younger brother, Cronus, shows up. He's plotting to overthrow Daddy and needs some serious muscle. He frees the Cyclopes, promising them freedom, power, respect. Blinded by hope, they help him stage the coup. And what happens next? A feast in their honor, not a chance. Cronus, plopping himself on the throne, looks at his powerful but ugly brothers and thinks, "Nah, I don't need these freaks in my new perfect world." And you know what he does? He throws them right back into the same damn pit. Can you imagine that betrayal? You get pulled out of hell to help someone, and then they kick you right back in. And this is where it gets really interesting. This is the part they skip in mythology class. Another eternity passes, and now Zeus, Cronus' son, decides to kick off his own revolution. But he, unlike his father and grandfather, is a little smarter. He frees the Cyclopes again, but this time for real. And then, in gratitude for their freedom, the three tortured, betrayed giants stand before their hellish forges. In the fire and fury of Tartarus, they forge the three greatest artifacts in history. For Zeus' trump card, the thunderbolts that can shatter mountains. For Poseidon, the trident, to summon tsunamis and shake the earth. And for the grim Hades, the helm of darkness, the perfect weapon for the god of the underworld. So it turns out that all the power of the Olympians, all that swagger they flaunted, was forged in a prison. Their strength was born from the pain, humiliation, and rage of three brothers the world saw as freaks of nature. So next time you see a statue of Zeus clutching his thunderbolt, just remember the three prisoners of the abyss who put that power in his hand. Without them, he'd have been a nobody, the army born from severed genitals, all right? Buckle up. Today, we read diving into some wild shit that would make your high school history books blush and self-immolate. We're going to talk about an army. An army born from the blood of severed genitals. Yeah, you heard me right. It all started, like any good story, with a vicious family soap opera. There was this god, Uranus, lord of the sky. And he had a son, Cronus, who decided that Daddy had been sitting on the throne for way too long. And instead of a long political struggle, Cronus chose a simpler path. He took a massive sickle and, well, he lopped off his old man's family jewels. One swift, sickening chop. Now, picture this in slow-mo. The giant divine member goes flying, trailing droplets of blood. The organ itself plopped into the sea, and from the foam, Aphrodite was born, but that's a story for another time. We're interested in the blood. Those crimson, hot drops rained down on the earth. And the earth, if you remember, isn't just dirt and rocks. It's Gaia, Mother Earth, a living being, and as she soaked up this blood full of rage, pain, and humiliation, she was basically knocked up. This is the part they don't tell you in polite company. The earth began to groan and tremble. And from her depths, tearing through the soil, they started crawling out. The giants, and forget the gentle giants from fairy tales. These were beasts as tall as mountains, with shaggy beards and eyes burning with hatred, and the creepiest part, their legs. Instead of legs, they had massive serpent tails covered in thick, armor-like dragon scales. Can you imagine the sound? Hundreds of giant serpent bodies scraping against the rock as their owners roared, shaking the heavens. They were born from rage, and their sole purpose was to destroy the new gods, the Olympians. And here's the kicker, the cherry on top of this bloody Sunday. The gods could not kill them. No way, no how. Zeus could hurl thunderbolts, Poseidon could bring down tsunamis, Ares could hack away with his sword. The giants would fall, writhing in agony, but they'd just get back up. They were children of both sky and earth, and divine weapons alone couldn't take them down. Can you imagine the panic on Olympus? You're an all-powerful god, and here comes an army spawned from your father's severed scrotum, and you can't do a damn thing about it. To give you an idea of their desperation, they had to call on a mortal for help. Yep, that roided-out beefcake, Heracles, only in an alliance with a human when a god knocked a giant down, and the mortal hero delivered the final blow. Could the beast be finished off for good? So yeah, an entire war between gods and giants, one of the most pivotal in mythology, started with an act of castration. Just how we like it, dirty, humiliating, and with a whole lot of blood. That's a real dark story for you. Catch you later. The living nightmare that halted a divine coup with a single glance, alright? Buckle up. Today, we read diving into some deep-level cosmic horror that will make the myths about Medusa look like a nursery rhyme. Everyone's used to thinking of Zeus as the top dog of Olympus, the thunder wielder who solves every problem with a snap of his fingers. What if I told you there was a time when his own wife, his brother, and his favorite daughter decided to throw him off the throne, and it wasn't Zeus who stopped them? It was a living nightmare, a creature whose very presence nearly made the gods shit their divine chittens. Meet the Hecaton Shires. Try saying that 3 times fast. 3 brothers. And each one had, get this, 50 heads and 100 hands. 50 heads, my friend. Can you imagine that chorus? That's not a symphony. It's 50 throats moaning, howling, and groaning all at once from an eternity of pain and madness. And the 100 hands ... they aren't just folded neatly. They're always twitching, clawing at the walls, always looking for something to grab, something to rip to shreds. This is the stuff they leave out of your boring mythology lectures, but when their own father, the sky god Uranus, took one look at his own kids, he just puked his guts out. He called them abominations and, without a second thought, hurled them into the deepest, foulest pit in all of creation, Tartarus. Just try to imagine the smell. Thousands of years locked away in the dark, stewing in their own filth and sweat. It's the pure, concentrated essence of despair and undiluted hatred. So one day, a coup is brewing on Olympus. Hera, Poseidon, and even wise-ass Athena decided they'd had enough of Zeus. They had him on the ropes, all set to carve up his kingdom. But one of Zeus's loyalists whispered a little something in his ear. A plan be so Zeus sprung one of the brothers from Tartarus. Just one. And this thing just appeared before the plotters. It didn't say a word. It didn't raise a single one of its 100 hands. It just existed, and the gods just stared. At the 50 faces, all twisted in masks of insanity. At the 100 hands, twitching in anticipation of a massacre. They breathed in that stench of eternal prison, of rot and raw, primal fury. And that was it. The coup was over before it even started. They silently untied Zeus and went their separate ways, not daring to make eye contact. Because they had just realized there are things far worse than a tyrant like Zeus. And just to give you an idea of their raw power, when the war against the Titans kicked off, these guys didn't mess around with spears. What for? They just ripped entire mountain ranges straight out of the ground and hurled them at their enemies. They used mountains as projectiles. 100 hands meant 100 cliffs flying at the enemy, all at once. So yeah, Zeus ruled Olympus. But his nuclear option, his ultimate insurance policy against any and all trouble, was 3 living nightmares. Creatures so terrifying that even the gods didn't dare test what they were capable of. And that, my friend, is the real dark story of power. The beast that made the gods flee Olympus in terror, all right, folks? Today, we're talking about the creature that made the gods of Olympus, your so-called all-powerful, holier-than-thou pantheon, run for the hills, screaming in terror. Yeah, you heard me right. There was a monster whose very presence made the likes of Apollo and Ares literally shit their divine pants and take off so fast they left a goddamn dust cloud. So, you buckled in, let's do this. Forget your hydras and your minotaurs, that's kids' stuff, campfire stories. Our guy today is the real heavyweight champion, Typhon. And just so you get who we're dealing with, just listen to his parentage. His mother was Gaia herself, that's Mother Earth, and his father, Tartarus. Yep, that same primordial abyss where the gods banished the Titans and anyone else who pissed them off. So this isn't just some random monster, it's the literal spawn of the planet itself and its darkest, most horrific prison. A Molotov cocktail of cosmic horror that was destined to make creation itself tremble, and tremble it did. To give you a sense of this thing's scale, he was so tall that his head scraped the stars. Not metaphorically, literally, and now for the cherry on top. Sprouting from his shoulders weren't arms, but 100 snake heads. 100? Can you even imagine that hideous chorus of hissing? That reek of venom, pus, and primal chaos that rolled off him. And instead of legs, he had massive, coiling knots of vipers. Every move he made was the sound of 1,000 scales scraping against stone. And this beautiful creature, roaring with 100 different voices, its eyes burning with hellfire, came stomping towards Olympus. So what did our gods do? These beings who decided the fates of mortals with a snap of their fingers. They shit themselves, every last one of them, except Zeus, scrambled to get away. Ares, the god of war, who should have been the first to charge. He ran. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and strategy. She ran. They didn't just leave. They panicked, ditched their golden sandals and what was left of their divine dignity, and bolted from their heavenly home. And here's where it gets really interesting. The part they definitely don't tell you in the textbooks. In some of the gnarliest versions of the myth, Typhon almost won. In their first throwdown, he didn't just rough Zeus up, he ripped out Zeus's sinews. Just picture it. The king of the gods, the master of lightning, the terror of all living things. Lying on the ground, a paralyzed, helpless husk of a god, while this beast holds his power, his very ability to move in its claws. It was absolute humiliation, total defeat. Of course, Zeus eventually got back on his feet, got his sinews back with a little help from Hermes, and then dropped an entire mountain on Typhon Mount Etna in Sicily. And to this day, when the volcano erupts, the ancient Greeks believed it was Typhon, in his eternal rage, trying to break free. So next time you hear about the invincible Olympians, just remember, there was a monster that made them all run like scared little kids, and its name was Typhon.